The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council stretched beyond what human eyes could comfortably perceive. Ambassador Sarah Chan stood at the designated human podium, a tiny speck of flesh and bone surrounded by beings that towered, slithered, floated, and existed in forms that defied easy description. The air itself hummed with translation frequencies, converting thousands of different languages and communication methods into something resembling understanding. Sarah had been Earth's representative for 3 years now, ever since humanity had been grudgingly accepted into the Council as a probationary species. The title still left a bitter taste in her mouth. Probationary. As if humanity needed to prove its worth to beings who had been spacefaring for millennia while humans were still discovering fire. The current speaker, a creature that resembled a cross between a jellyfish and a computer mainframe, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as it addressed the assembly. The Zephyrians were one of the founding species of the Council, their technological prowess matched only by their arrogance. The matter before us today concerns the human colony ship Prometheus, the speaker intoned through the translation matrix. As per Galactic Council Resolution 2847, all new settlements must be approved by the Colonial Oversight Committee before establishment. The humans have violated this fundamental law. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Here they were again, being treated like children who had colored outside the lines. She activated her communication implant, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. With respect, honored speaker, humanity was never informed of Resolution 2847. When we joined this council 3 years ago, we were provided with the standard colonial protocols, which made no mention of pre-approval requirements for settlements within our designated expansion zones. A ripple of what Sarah had learned to recognize as amusement passed through several species sections. The Vorthak delegation, massive insectoid beings with chitinous exoskeletons, clicked their mandibles in what she hoped was approval rather than hunger. The speaker's luminescence shifted to deeper, more agitated hues. Ignorance of the law is not an acceptable defense, human representative. Your species' tendency toward unilateral action has been noted by this council on numerous occasions. Unilateral action? Sarah's voice carried a sharp edge now. You mean like when we responded to the Kepler station emergency, while 3 council species debated the proper committee to assign the rescue operation to? Or when we shared our quantum computing breakthroughs freely with all member species instead of hoarding them like certain founding members? The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of life support systems seemed to pause. Sarah realized she had crossed a line, but she was tired of being lectured by species who seemed more concerned with bureaucratic procedure than actual progress. A new voice entered the conversation, deep and resonant like the sound of tectonic plates shifting. The Gorvani representative, a being that looked like living stone animated by pure will, spoke rarely but commanded attention when it did. The human raises valid points. Their species has demonstrated both resourcefulness and generosity since joining our alliance. Perhaps the issue is not their actions, but our communication of expectations. Sarah felt a moment of hope, but it was quickly crushed by the speaker's response. The Gorvani perspective is noted, but irrelevant. The law exists, and it has been broken. The human colony ship Prometheus must be recalled immediately, and the settlement disbanded. Furthermore, humanity's colonial expansion rights are hereby suspended pending a full review by the Compliance Committee. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. The Prometheus carried 40,000 colonists, including families who had sold everything they owned for the chance at a new life on Kepler 442b. The planet was perfect for human habitation, with Earth-like gravity, abundant water, and a stable ecosystem. It had taken humanity 15 years to build the ship, and another 8 for the journey. "You can't be serious," Sarah said, her diplomatic training warring with her human instincts. "Those people have invested their entire lives in this venture. They've been on that planet for 2 years, establishing infrastructure, growing food, building homes. You're asking us to uproot 40,000 human lives because of a bureaucratic oversight. The speaker's patterns shifted to what Sarah had learned indicated finality. The decision is made. The humans will comply or face expulsion from the Galactic Council. Sarah looked around the chamber, searching for support among the assembled species. A few seemed uncomfortable with the harsh ruling, but none spoke up. The political calculus was simple. Humanity was young, small, and ultimately expendable in the grand scheme of galactic politics. And if we refuse? Sarah asked quietly. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. The very concept of defying a council ruling was apparently so foreign that many species couldn't even process the question properly. Refuse. The speaker's bioluminescence flared bright enough to cause Sarah's eyes to water. No member species has ever refused a direct council mandate. Well, Sarah said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, there's a first time for everything. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her. She thought of the colonists on Kepler 442b, of the children taking their first steps on alien soil, of the families building something new and wonderful in defiance of the vast, cold universe. Let me be clear, she continued, her voice growing stronger. Humanity will not abandon our colony. We will not recall the Prometheus. We will not submit to the arbitrary whims of a council that treats us as second-class members while expecting first-class obedience. The speaker's form pulsed with what Sarah recognized as fury. Then, humanity will be expelled from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. You will lose all trade agreements, all technological exchanges, all protection under council law. Your species will be alone in the universe once again. Sarah smiled, and somehow that simple human expression seemed to unsettle the assembled aliens more than any threat could have. You seem to think that scares us, she said. But you've forgotten something important about humanity. We spent our entire evolutionary history alone on one small planet, fighting for survival against impossible odds. We reached for the stars before we even knew if anyone else was out there. We've always been alone in the ways that matter most. She began walking toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the crystalline chamber. You can keep your counsel, she called over her shoulder. We'll keep our independence. As Sarah Chun left the Galactic Council for the last time, she couldn't have known that her words would echo through history. She couldn't have predicted that humanity's defiant departure would spark the greatest crisis the galactic community had ever faced. But she was about to find out. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks via the fastest council transport Sarah could commandeer before her diplomatic immunity was revoked. She spent the time drafting her report and preparing for the storm that was sure to follow. The council had never faced open defiance before, and she suspected their response would be swift and harsh. What she didn't expect was to arrive at Earth, to find the planet already in chaos. News of the confrontation had reached Earth through unofficial channels, carried by sympathetic species and back-channel communications. The human government was split down the middle. Half wanted to negotiate a return to the Council's good graces, while the other half supported Sarah's stance. Protests filled the streets of every major city, with independence and compliance factions clashing in increasingly violent confrontations. President Martinez met Sarah at the spaceport, his face grim. "Sarah, what have you done?" he asked as they climbed into the armored transport. "I told them the truth, Mr. President, that humanity won't be bullied by bureaucrats, no matter how advanced their technology. Their technology that we depend on," Martinez reminded her. "Our fusion reactors, our faster-than-light communications, our medical advances, all based on tech-sharing agreements with Council species. Without those agreements, we'll adapt," Sarah said firmly. "We always do." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah wondered if she had just doomed her species to irrelevance. The Council controlled faster-than-light travel, antimatter production, and hundreds of other technologies that humanity had only begun to understand. Without access to these advances, Earth would be cut off from its growing colonies, isolated in a hostile universe. The transport arrived at the presidential complex, where Sarah was immediately escorted to an emergency session of the Security Council. The mood in the room was tense, with military leaders and civilian officials arguing in heated whispers. General Harrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, looked up as Sarah entered. "Ambassador Chun, I hope you have a plan, because as of 6 hours ago, every council species has severed diplomatic relations with Earth. Our colony ships are being denied docking rights at council stations. Our trade vessels are being turned away from established shipping lanes. And our deep space monitoring stations are detecting massive fleet movements heading toward the outer colonies." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What kind of fleet movements?" "Council Enforcement Division," Harrison replied. 3 battle groups, approximately 200 ships total. Their headings suggest they're moving to blockade our settlements in the Centauri system. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had 8 established colonies beyond Earth, each supporting millions of people. If the Council blockaded them, the colonies would be cut off from supply lines and technological support. They would slowly starve and die. "Mr. President," Sarah said, turning to Martinez, "I need to address the planet. The people need to know what we're facing." Martinez nodded grimly. "Schedule a global broadcast for tonight." "And Sarah?" He paused. "I hope you're right about humanity being able to adapt, because we're about to find out if our species can survive on its own in a hostile universe." That night, Sarah stood before cameras that would carry her words to every human settlement from the underground cities of Luna to the frontier outposts of Alpha Centauri. Behind her, Earth hung in the void, a blue marble that suddenly seemed very small and very alone. "My fellow humans," she began, "today marks the end of one chapter in our species' history and the beginning of another. We have left the Galactic Council, not in anger or spite, but in defense of our fundamental right to determine our own destiny." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "The Council expects us to crawl back, to beg for their forgiveness, and accept whatever scraps they deign to offer us. They believe that without their technology and protection, humanity will collapse into chaos and barbarism." Sarah smiled, and for a moment, she looked like every human explorer who had ever stared into the unknown, and said yes. "They're wrong. We're the species that learned to make fire in the darkness. We are the descendants of people who crossed frozen oceans on wooden boats, who built cities in hostile deserts, who reached for the moon with nothing but mathematics and determination. We have never needed anyone's permission to survive and thrive." The broadcast was watched by every human in the solar system and beyond. In the colonies, families gathered around communication terminals, their faces reflecting both fear and hope. On Earth, crowds filled public squares, hanging on every word. "The path ahead will not be easy," Sarah continued. "We will face challenges that will test every aspect of our ingenuity and resolve. But I have seen what humanity can accomplish when we work together, when we refuse to accept that something is impossible simply because it has never been done before." As she spoke, reports were already flowing in from across human space. Research teams were poring over every piece of Council technology humanity had ever acquired, reverse engineering, and improving upon alien designs. Engineers were drafting plans for new types of spacecraft using purely human innovations. Scientists were pooling their knowledge to solve the seemingly impossible problem of maintaining interstellar communication without Council relay networks. "To our colonies among the stars," Sarah said, looking directly into the camera, "you are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. We will find a way to reach you, to support you, to stand with you. Because that is what humans do. We leave no one behind." The broadcast ended, but the real work was just beginning. In laboratories and workshops across human space, the most ambitious project in the species' history was about to commence. Humanity was going to learn to survive and prosper without the Galactic Council's help. They had no choice. Within hours of Sarah's broadcast, something unprecedented began happening across human space. It started small. A research team in New Geneva announcing they had successfully replicated a council gravity manipulation device using modified Earth technology. A mining operation on Ceres reporting they had found a way to extract antimatter using techniques developed independently of council methods. But as the news spread, the scope of human innovation became clear. For 3 years, humanity had been reverse engineering and improving upon every piece of alien technology they had encountered. While the Council saw humans as primitive newcomers, human scientists have been quietly dissecting, understanding, and enhancing technologies that had remained static for centuries in alien hands. Dr. Elena Vasquez, director of the Mars Research Institute, held a press conference that was broadcast throughout the solar system. What the Council doesn't understand, she explained to the assembled reporters, is that humans don't just use technology, we improve it. Every piece of council tech we've encountered has been enhanced by human innovation. Their quantum computers? We've made them 30% more efficient. Their fusion reactors? We've increased their output by almost 50%. Their faster-than-light communications? We've extended their range and reduced their power requirements. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just been copying alien technology. They had been making it better. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Wu, a theoretical physicist working in a small laboratory on Luna's far side, announced a breakthrough that would change everything. We've achieved stable, faster-than-light travel without using council technology, he announced via quantum link to Earth. Our method is based on human innovations in quantum field manipulation, using principles we derive from studying council designs, but implementing them in entirely new ways. The news sent shockwaves through human space. If Wu's claims were true, humanity could maintain contact with its colonies without depending on council infrastructure. They could be truly independent. But Wu's breakthrough came with a warning. Our FDL method is faster than council technology, he explained. Significantly faster. If we implement this on a large scale, we'll have a technological advantage that will fundamentally change the balance of power in this galaxy. On Kepler 442b, the colonists of Prometheus received Sarah's broadcast with a mixture of relief and determination. They had already begun preparing for isolation, assuming that their defiance would cut them off from Earth forever. But now, with the promise of new human FTL technology, they dare to hope. Colony Administrator Lisa Park stood before the 40,000 humans who had made Kepler 442b their home. We came here to build something new, she told them. We didn't know we would become the symbol of human independence, but that's what we are now. The Council wants us gone, but we're not going anywhere. The colonists cheered, their voices echoing across the alien landscape that had become their home. We're going to show them what humans can build when we're not held back by bureaucracy and fear, Park continued. This planet will become a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Unknown to the colonists, their declaration of defiance was being monitored by Council enforcement vessels holding position at the edge of the system. The alien commanders were receiving increasingly urgent orders from the Council homeworlds. The humans had to be brought back into compliance. By force, if necessary. But, as the Council fleets prepared to advance on human colonies, they were about to discover that humanity's 3 years of apparent subservience had been 3 years of preparation. The war for human independence was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that they had severely underestimated the young species from Earth. Admiral Calera of the Zephyrian Third Fleet floated in the command chamber of her flagship, the Transcendent Truth, as reports filtered in from across Council space. The bioluminescent patterns covering her translucent form flickered with increasing agitation as she processed the intelligence data. Explain to me again how a species that couldn't achieve faster-than-light travel without our assistance has somehow developed ships that outperform our best vessels, she demanded of her intelligence officer. Commander Vorix, a junior Zephyrian whose patterns betrayed his nervousness, pulsed with data streams as he replied. The humans appear to have been reverse engineering our technology from the moment they joined the Council. But they didn't simply copy our designs, they improved them. Impossible qu'il a dismissed. We have been refining our technology for over 10,000 years. A species that has been spacefaring for less than a century cannot simply improve upon our work. With respect, Admiral, the evidence suggests otherwise. Human vessels have been detected traveling at speeds exceeding our maximum FTL capabilities by a factor of 3. Their ships appear smaller and more maneuverable than our designs, but carry significantly more firepower. And their communication systems. Vorix paused, his patterns dimming with concern. What about their communication systems? They appear to have achieved instantaneous galactic range communication. Our fastest quantum relays have a delay of several minutes across galactic distances. The humans are coordinating their forces in real time across light years. Admiral Calera's form flared with anger and disbelief. You're suggesting that in 3 months, the humans have not only achieved technological parity with the Council species, but have actually surpassed us? Not in 3 months, Admiral. Our analysis suggests they have been developing these capabilities for the entire duration of their Council membership. They were learning from us while simultaneously innovating beyond our understanding. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had always maintained its authority through technological superiority. Member species accepted Council rule because the alternatives, isolation, and technological stagnation, were worse than submission. But if humanity could not only survive outside the Council, but actively thrive and advance, it changed everything. What is the status of the blockade around the human colonies? Calera asked. Vorix's patterns shifted to deep blue, the Zephyrian equivalent of profound concern. Admiral, we have lost contact with Battle Group 7. The command chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Lost contact. 57 ships, Admiral. They were maintaining position around the Alpha Centauri system when Vorix hesitated. When what, Commander? When a single human vessel appeared and demanded they withdraw from human space. When Battle Group 7 refused, the human ship disabled them. Disabled 57 Council warships? One human vessel. The human ship identified itself as the UES Indomitable. It used some form of advanced electromagnetic pulse that completely shut down our ship's systems without causing permanent damage. Then it tractored the entire battle group to the edge of the system and released them with a message. Calera's form was now pulsing with patterns of fury. What message? That this was a warning. That any Council vessels found in human space would be removed. And that humanity was prepared to defend itself by any means necessary. The report from Alpha Centauri was just the beginning. Similar incidents were occurring across human space as Council forces discovered that their technological advantages had been neutralized. Ships that had dominated the galaxy for millennia were being outmaneuvered and outgunned by vessels built by a species the Council had considered barely civilized. On Earth, President Martinez stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the presidential complex, watching as real-time reports flowed in from across human space. General Harrison, he said to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, "Tell me we have some good news." Harrison smiled grimly. "Actually, Mr. President, the news is better than we dared hope. Our new FTL drives are performing beyond expectations. We've re-established contact with all our colonies. Supply runs that used to take months are now completed in days. And our defensive capabilities..." He gestured to a holographic display showing the Alpha Centauri system. The Indomitable's encounter with the Council blockade was our first real test of human military technology against theirs. The results speak for themselves. Martinez studied the display, showing the positions of disabled Council warships being towed away from human space. "No casualties." "None, sir." Captain Rodriguez was very specific about that. We're not at war with the Council. We're simply asserting our independence. But we wanted to make it clear that we're capable of defending that independence. The strategy was working better than anyone had anticipated. Instead of engaging in destructive warfare, humanity was demonstrating overwhelming technological superiority while maintaining moral authority. They weren't the aggressors. They were simply defending their right to exist independently. But the real shock came when Dr. Wu arrived from Luna with news that would change everything. "Mr. President," Wu said as he entered the Situation Room, still wearing his laboratory clothes, "we need to talk. Privately." Martinez dismissed the other officials and activated the room's privacy shields. "What is it, Doctor?" Wu pulled out a small device that looked like nothing more than a metallic sphere. "This is a prototype quantum-dimensional interface," he explained. "It allows instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the universe." Martinez stared at the device. "Instantaneous. Not faster than light, Mr. President. Instantaneous. As in, zero travel time between point A and point B, regardless of distance." The implications were staggering. If humanity possessed truly instantaneous travel, they would have an insurmountable advantage over every other species in the galaxy. "How is this possible?" Martinez asked. "We've been studying quantum mechanics differently than the Council species," Wu explained. "They see the universe as a series of interconnected dimensions that must be navigated. We've discovered that it's actually a single dimension that can be folded. Imagine a piece of paper with 2 points on opposite ends. Instead of traveling across the surface, we've learned to fold the paper so the points touch. And this works?" Wu smiled. "I just traveled here from Luna, Mr. President. The trip took 37 nanoseconds." As the implications of humanity's technological breakthrough began to sink in, similar conversations were taking place in the highest levels of government across Earth and its colonies. Humanity had not just achieved independence from the Galactic Council. They had potentially leapfrogged every other species in terms of technological advancement. On Kepler 442b, Colony Administrator Lisa Park was meeting with her senior staff when a quantum communication from Earth arrived. "Are you telling me," she said slowly, "that we now have technology that makes us potentially the most advanced species in the galaxy?" "That's exactly what we're saying," came the reply from Dr. Wu, his image flickering slightly over the quantum link. "But it comes with enormous responsibility. We have the power to reshape galactic civilization, but we need to decide how we want to use it." The question was being debated in emergency sessions across human space. Some argued for using their technological advantage to establish human dominance over the galaxy. Others suggested sharing their discoveries with selected species to build a new alliance. Still others believed humanity should retreat into isolation, using their advanced technology to build an impenetrable fortress around human space. But it was Sarachin who proposed the most audacious plan of all. "We don't conquer the galaxy," she said during a council meeting on Earth. "We remake it." "What do you mean?" President Martinez asked. "The Galactic Council maintains its power through technological monopoly and bureaucratic control," Sarah explained. "They keep other species dependent and subservient. What if we broke that system entirely?" She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's political structure. "We share our technology freely with every species that wants it, not as a trade agreement or alliance, but as a gift. We give away faster-than-light travel, advanced communication systems, improved energy generation, quantum-dimensional interfaces, everything." The room was silent as the implications sank in. "That would cause the complete collapse of the council system," General Harrison observed. "Exactly," Sarah replied. "No more technological monopolies. No more forced dependency. Every species would have the tools they need to be truly independent." "That's incredibly dangerous," Martinez said slowly. "Some of these species might use advanced technology for warfare or oppression." "Some might," Sarah agreed. "But others will use it to explore, to create, to build something better than what we have now. And with quantum dimensional travel, the galaxy becomes effectively infinite. There's room for everyone to find their own path. The debate raged for hours, but gradually, consensus began to form around Sarah's radical proposal. Humanity had the power to reshape galactic civilization, but instead of using that power to dominate, they would use it to liberate. The decision was made. Humanity would not become the new galactic overlords. Instead, they would tear down the existing system and give every species the chance to determine its own destiny. But first, they had to survive the Council's response. Reports were arriving from across the galaxy of massive military buildups in Council space. The Zephyrians were mobilizing their entire battle fleet. The Gorvani were activating their planet-killing dreadnoughts. The insectoid Vorthak were breeding warrior castes specifically designed for ship-to-ship combat. The Council had realized that humanity represented an existential threat to their entire system of government. If other species learned that independence and technological advancement were possible, the Council's authority would collapse. They were preparing for total war. Admiral Calera stood in the Grand Strategy Chamber of the Council's military headquarters, a space station the size of a small moon that served as the nerve center for the galaxy's most powerful military force. Around her, representatives from dozens of species debated humanity's fate. "The situation is clear," she announced, her bioluminescent patterns commanding attention from across the chamber. "Humanity has developed technology that threatens the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. They must be brought back under Council control, regardless of the cost." The Gorvani military commander, a living mountain of sentient stone named Chromac, spoke with a voice of grinding bedrock. "The humans have made their choice. They wish to live outside the Council's protection. Perhaps we should grant them this wish permanently." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The implications were clear. If humanity could not be controlled, they would be eliminated. "How large is their fleet?" asked the Vorthak Queen Admiral, her compound eyes glittering with predatory interest. "Unknown," Calera admitted. "Our intelligence suggests they have been building ships in secret for years. Conservative estimates put their military strength at several hundred vessels. But, given their technological capabilities, ship-for-ship comparisons may be meaningless. A single human vessel was able to disable 57 of our warships without taking damage." The chamber fell silent as the assembled military leaders grappled with the possibility that their overwhelming numerical advantage might not matter. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" asked the Speaker of the Council, whose image was being projected into the chamber from the civilian government complex. Calera's patterns shifted to the deep red of absolute determination. "Total mobilization. We gather every warship in Council space, 10,000 vessels if necessary. We surround human space and demand their unconditional surrender. If they refuse, we eliminate every human settlement in the galaxy." "That would be genocide," observed a representative from the peaceful Etherians, whose species had joined the Council specifically to avoid such conflicts. "It would be survival," Calera replied coldly. "If humanity's technology spreads to other species, the Council as we know it will cease to exist. Billions of lives depend on maintaining the stability we have built over millennia." The vote was called, and the result was unanimous among the military species. The Council would mobilize its entire fleet for a final confrontation with humanity. But as the orders went out across Council space, activating reserves and calling in ships from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, none of the assembled leaders could have predicted what humanity's response would be. Because humanity had already made their choice, and it wasn't what anyone expected. 3 days after the Council's mobilization order, every major news network in the galaxy received an identical transmission. The message appeared simultaneously on screens from the core worlds to the outer rim, transmitted through technology that bypassed every security system and communication protocol the Council had ever developed. The face that appeared on billions of screens was human, a middle-aged woman with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, the woman said, speaking in a galactic common tongue, but with inflections that marked her as distinctly human. I am the director of the Human Technology Sharing Initiative, and I have an announcement that will change the future of this galaxy. The transmission was being watched by shocked officials in the council chambers, by ordinary citizens on thousands of worlds, and by military commanders preparing for what they believed would be the final war against humanity. In 72 hours, Dr. Vasquez continued, humanity will begin freely sharing all of our technological advances with any species that requests them. Faster-than-light travel, quantum-dimensional interfaces, advanced energy systems, instantaneous communication, all of it will be made available without cost or restriction. The galaxy reacted with stunned silence, followed quickly by chaos. We are not doing this to gain allies or to build an empire, Vasquez explained. We are doing this because we believe that every sentient species deserves the chance to determine its own destiny, free from technological dependency or political coercion. She paused, and her expression hardened. To the Galactic Council, I say this: your age is ending. Not because humanity seeks to replace you, but because the galaxy is about to become a place where your authority is irrelevant. When every species has access to advanced technology, when no one needs your permission to travel the stars or communicate across the void, your power will simply evaporate. The transmission ended, but its effects were immediate and profound. On worlds across the galaxy, governments and populations erupted in a heated debates. Some species demanded that their leaders immediately request access to human technology. Others called for their governments to reject humanity's offer and stand with the Council. Still others began making plans to send representatives to human space, regardless of their government's official positions. In the Council chambers, panic was setting in. This changes everything, the speaker admitted to the assembled representatives. If even half the galaxy accepts humanity's offer, our authority will collapse within months. But Admiral Calera had a different perspective. This gives us a clear target, she said, her patterns pulsing with deadly intent. We know exactly where the humans plan to begin distributing their technology. We intercept them there and eliminate the threat permanently. You're talking about attacking civilian vessels, protested the Etherian representative. I'm talking about preventing the collapse of galactic civilization, Calera replied. The humans have forced our hand. If we cannot control them, we must eliminate them. As the Council debated humanity's fate, preparations were already underway in human space for the most audacious plan in galactic history. Ships were being built at an unprecedented pace, loaded with technology and staffed with volunteers willing to carry humanity's gifts to the far corners of the galaxy. But the humans weren't naive about the risks they were taking. They knew the Council would try to stop them, and they were preparing for the confrontation that would determine the future of galactic civilization. The question was no longer whether there would be a war between humanity and the Council. The question was whether humanity could change the galaxy before the Council could destroy them. Time was running out, and the entire galaxy was holding its breath. The Kepler system had become the epicenter of the most significant moment in galactic history. 72 hours after Dr. Vasquez's galaxy-wide broadcast, representatives from over 300 species had arrived to witness humanity's promised technology sharing. Their ships filled the space around Kepler, 442b, in a chaotic array of different designs, technologies, and cultures that had never been gathered in one place before. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus Gift, the massive vessel that would serve as humanity's mobile technology distribution center. Through the viewports, she could see ships from species she had never encountered, crystalline vessels that pulsed with internal light, organic ships that seemed to breathe in the vacuum of space, and mechanical constructs that defied easy categorization. Status report, she requested from her communications officer. Lieutenant Chin scrolled through her displays. We have confirmed attendance from 317 different species. 67 of them are not Council members. The Council species present appear to be here against their government's official positions. Any sign of Council enforcement fleets? Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout the sector, but nothing in our immediate vicinity yet. Santos nodded. The intelligence reports had been clear. The Council was mobilizing everything they had for a final confrontation with humanity. The question was whether they would attack during the technology-sharing ceremony or wait for the aftermath. On the planet's surface, Colony Administrator Lisa Park was hosting the largest diplomatic gathering in the world's short history. The main colony dome had been expanded specifically for the occasion, its transparent aluminum walls providing a stunning view of the alien fleet overhead. Park stood at the podium, looking out at an audience that represented the diversity of galactic life. There were beings of energy housed in mechanical shells, species that existed partially in other dimensions, and creatures so alien that the translation systems struggled to interpret their communication methods. "Welcome to Kepler 442b, she began, her words carried by quantum transmitters to every ship in orbit and broadcast live across the galaxy. Today, humanity makes good on its promise to share our technological advances freely with all who seek them." She gestured to Dr. Wu, who had arrived from Luna with the first batch of quantum dimensional interface devices. These devices will allow any vessel to achieve instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the universe. Wu explained to the assembled representatives. There are no restrictions on their use, no licensing fees, and no political requirements. They are gifts freely given in the hope that they will help your species reach their full potential. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Representatives surged forward, eager to examine the technology that could revolutionize their civilizations overnight. But the humans had prepared for this moment carefully. Each species will receive a complete technical package, Park continued. This includes not just the devices themselves, but full manufacturing specifications, theoretical foundations, and training materials. You will not be dependent on humanity for maintenance or upgrades. You will have everything you need to improve upon these designs yourselves. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just sharing technology. They were sharing the knowledge to advance that technology independently. It was the antithesis of the Council's approach, which kept member species dependent on continued cooperation. But the ceremony was interrupted by an urgent communication from the orbiting fleet. "Administrator Park," came Captain Santos's voice over the quantum link, "we have a problem. Council enforcement fleets have arrived at the system's edge." The main display in the colony dome switched to show sensor readings from the orbital defense platforms. The assembled representatives gasped as the scope of the approaching force became clear. Admiral Calera commanded the largest fleet in galactic history. Over 8,000 vessels from dozens of Council species had been assembled for what the Admiral intended to be the final solution to the human problem. Dreadnoughts the size of cities floated alongside swarms of fighter craft. Planet killer missiles were loaded and armed. The combined firepower could sterilize entire star systems. "This is Admiral Calera of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division," came the transmission to the Kepler system. "All non-Council vessels are ordered to withdraw immediately. Any species found cooperating with the human rebels will be considered in violation of galactic law." The response from the gathered representatives was immediate and defiant. "This is Captain Zorix of the Andorian Republic," came one reply. "We recognize no authority that would prevent the free exchange of knowledge between sentient species." "Trade Captain Vex of the Centauri Collective agrees," added another voice. "We have come here of our own free will, and we will not be intimidated." Similar declarations poured in from across the fleet. Species that had been marginalized by the Council, independent worlds that had never joined the galactic government, and even some official Council members who had defied their government's orders, all stood together in defiance of the approaching armada. Admiral Calera studied the sensor readings with growing frustration. Instead of the handful of human ships she had expected to find, the Kepler system was filled with vessels from hundreds of species. Attacking now would mean going to war with a significant portion of the galaxy's population. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, we're detecting several human vessels taking defensive positions around the planet. How many? 12, Admiral. But they're unlike anything in our databases. The energy signatures are unprecedented. Calera's form pulsed with angry light. 12 ships against 8,000? Are the humans insane? But as the Council fleet moved closer, it became clear that the humans had not come unprepared for this confrontation. The UES Defiant materialized out of quantum-dimensional space directly in front of the Council fleet. The ship was sleek and angular, built using technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Its hull seemed to shimmer with contained energy, and its weapon ports glowed with power that the Council's sensors couldn't properly classify. Captain Rodriguez stood on the Defiant's bridge, studying the massive fleet arrayed before him. The odds were impossibly stacked against humanity, but that had never stopped humans before. This is Captain Rodriguez of the United Earth ship Defiant. He broadcast to the Council fleet. You are violating the sovereign space of an independent species. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response came quickly. This is Admiral Calera. You are greatly outnumbered, human. Surrender now, and your species may yet survive what is to come. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Admiral, you seem to be operating under some misconceptions about humanity. Allow me to educate you. The Defiant fired a single shot from its primary weapon, a focused quantum-dimensional beam that traveled instantly to its target. The beam struck the Council fleet's flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion, and simply unmade it. The ship didn't explode or break apart. It simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only empty space where moments before there had been the most powerful warship in the galaxy. The entire Council fleet stopped dead in space. That was a demonstration, Rodriguez announced calmly. Our weapons don't just destroy matter. They remove it from this dimension entirely. Your shields, your armor, your hull integrity. None of it matters against technology that operates outside the normal rules of physics. Admiral Calera stared at the empty space where a flagship had been. 800 crew members, gone without a trace. The implications were horrifying. Impossible, she whispered. Admiral, her tactical officer reported with barely controlled terror. We're detecting quantum-dimensional distortions throughout our fleet. The humans have surrounded us. Indeed, 11 more human vessels had materialized around the Council fleet, their weapons trained on key ships throughout the formation. The hunters had become the hunted. This is your final warning, Rodriguez continued. Withdraw from this system and return to Council space. Any attempt to interfere with the peaceful sharing of technology will be met with the complete elimination of your forces. But even as the immediate military threat was neutralized, the real battle was taking place on a different level entirely. Across the galaxy, the live broadcast of the confrontation was being watched by billions of beings. They had seen the Council's massive fleet arrive to prevent the free sharing of technology. They had seen humanity's impossible defense against overwhelming odds. And they were drawing their own conclusions about which side represented freedom and which represented oppression. On Centauri Prime, capital of one of the Council's most loyal member species, riots were breaking out in the streets. Citizens who had watched the broadcast were demanding that their government request access to human technology immediately. The Council has kept us dependent for centuries, one protester shouted at the government complex. They control our technology, our trade, our very ability to travel between stars. The humans offer us freedom, and our government chooses slavery. Similar scenes were playing out on worlds throughout Council space. The carefully maintained order that had governed the galaxy for millennia was beginning to collapse as ordinary citizens realized there was an alternative to Council rule. In the emergency session of the Council chambers, panic was setting in. The situation is spiraling out of control, reported the intelligence chief. We're detecting uprisings on over 200 worlds. Our member species are demanding immediate access to human technology, and several governments are threatening to withdraw from the Council entirely if we don't accommodate them. The speaker's bioluminescent patterns flickered with distress. How is this possible? We have maintained order for 10,000 years. One species cannot simply undo everything we have built. One species with superior technology can observe the Gorvani representative with typical bluntness. The humans have made the Council obsolete. Our authority was always based on the belief that species needed us to survive and prosper. The humans have proven that assumption false. But Admiral Cholera, her image still being projected from the Kepler system where her fleet remained surrounded, had a different perspective. We can still salvage this situation, she argued. The humans have revealed the full scope of their capabilities. We adapt our strategy accordingly. We cannot defeat them through direct military action, but we can contain them. Blockade human space completely. Prevent any ship from reaching human worlds. Eventually, their resources will be exhausted, and they will be forced to negotiate. It was a desperate plan, but it was the Council's last hope for maintaining their authority. However, humanity had anticipated this strategy as well. Back in the Kepler system, the technology-sharing ceremony had resumed despite the presence of the surrounded Council fleet. Representatives from hundreds of species were receiving quantum-dimensional interfaces, advanced communication systems, and manufacturing specifications for technologies that would revolutionize their civilizations. But Dr. Wu had saved the most significant revelation for last. There is one more gift we wish to share, he announced to the assembled representatives and the billions watching across the galaxy. We call it the Liberation Protocol. He activated a holographic display showing a complex network of quantum-dimensional nodes. Using our instantaneous travel technology, we have constructed a network of relay stations throughout the galaxy. These stations will allow any vessel equipped with our quantum interfaces to travel instantly between any 2 points in known space. The network is autonomous, self-maintaining, and completely free to use. The implications were staggering. With the Liberation Protocol active, the Council's control of travel routes would become meaningless. Any species could travel anywhere instantly without needing Council approval or infrastructure. The network goes live in 24 hours, Wu announced. At that point, every species in this galaxy will have complete freedom of movement and communication. Admiral Cholera received the news with a mixture of rage and despair. The humans had not just developed superior weapons. They had constructed the infrastructure to make Council authority irrelevant overnight. Fall back, she ordered her fleet. All vessels withdraw to the edge of the system and maintain position. Admiral, her tactical officer questioned. The humans have won this battle, Cholera admitted bitterly. But the war is far from over. If we cannot prevent them from sharing their technology, perhaps we can find another way to maintain order in the chaos they have unleashed. As the Council fleet withdrew to a safe distance, the technology-sharing ceremony continued. Representatives from across the galaxy received not just advanced technology, but the tools to build a better future for their species. But the humans were not naive about the challenges ahead. They had shattered the old order, but building something better would require the cooperation of hundreds of species with different values, needs, and ambitions. Sarah Chun, watching the ceremony from Earth, knew that humanity had just taken an irreversible step into an uncertain future. They had given the galaxy the tools for unprecedented prosperity and freedom, but those same tools could be used for conquest and oppression. The next phase of human history and galactic civilization was about to begin, and no one could predict how it would unfold 6 months after the Liberation Protocol went online. The galaxy had become unrecognizable. The ancient trade routes that had defined galactic commerce for millennia were now obsolete. Ships could travel instantly between any 2 points in the galaxy using the quantum dimensional network that humanity had freely provided. Independent worlds that had been isolated for centuries were suddenly connected to the galactic community. Species that had never been able to afford Council transportation fees were now exploring distant stars. President Martinez stood in the observatory deck of the new Earth Station Alpha, watching as ships from dozens of different species arrived and departed through quantum gateways. The station had been built in just 4 months using collaborative technology from multiple species: human quantum engineering, Andalite bioorganic materials, Centauri energy systems, and dozens of other innovations that had emerged from the free exchange of knowledge. "The reports are remarkable," Dr. Vasquez said, joining him at the observation window. "Trade has increased by over 3,000%. Scientific collaboration projects have multiplied by a factor of 50. We're seeing technological advances happening in months that used to take decades." "And the Council?" Martinez asked. Vasquez's expression grew more serious. "They're adapting faster than we anticipated. Admiral Calera has been replaced by someone more pragmatic, Admiral Thane of the Regellian Empire. Instead of trying to destroy the New Order, they're attempting to co-opt it." Indeed, the Galactic Council had not collapsed as many had predicted. Instead, they had undergone a radical transformation. The authoritarian structure that had governed the galaxy for millennia was evolving into something entirely new, a loose confederation that provided services rather than demanded obedience. Admiral Thane, a being whose species had evolved from energy-based life forms, understood the new reality better than his predecessor. The Council could no longer control technology or movement, but they could still offer value to galactic civilization through coordination, mediation, and expertise. In the renovated Council chambers, Thane addressed the Assembly of Species Representatives, a body that had grown from a few dozen founding members to over 800 different civilizations. "The age of Council authority is over," he announced, his translated words carrying across the vast chamber. "We can either evolve with the changing galaxy or become irrelevant. I propose we choose evolution." The chamber buzzed with discussion as species that had never been allowed to speak in Council proceedings suddenly found their voices heard and valued. "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Ambassador Zorix of the Andorian Republic, one of the many species that had benefited dramatically from access to human technology. "I propose we become what we always claimed to be," Thane replied. "A council of equals, working together for mutual benefit. No more technological monopolies. No more enforced dependencies. No more assumed authority over sovereign species." It was a radical transformation, but the alternative was complete irrelevance. Species across the galaxy were forming new alliances, new trading partnerships, and new collaborative ventures that bypassed the Council entirely. The old model of centralized control had become impossible to maintain. But not everyone was happy with the galaxy's rapid transformation. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, factory manager Corvex of the Hegemony Corporation watched as production lines that had operated unchanged for centuries were being rapidly upgraded with new technologies. Workers who had spent their entire lives performing repetitive tasks were being retrained for more complex roles. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained order was dissolving as information and capabilities became democratized. "This chaos cannot continue," Corvex complained to his superior via quantum communication. "Our workers are demanding higher wages, better conditions, and decision-making authority. The old contracts and agreements that guaranteed our profits are being challenged everywhere." The response was cold and calculating. "Then we adapt or we perish. The humans have given every species the tools to be self-sufficient. That includes the tools to ignore corporate exploitation. Find new ways to provide value, or find yourself replaced by those who can." It was a conversation happening in boardrooms and power centers across the galaxy. Traditional hierarchies were collapsing as individuals and communities gained access to technologies that made them independent of established power structures. But the most dramatic changes were happening in places that had been forgotten by the old order. The Outer Rim had always been the galaxy's backwater, worlds too poor or too remote to matter to the Council species. But with access to quantum-dimensional travel and advanced manufacturing technologies, these forgotten worlds were becoming centers of innovation and growth. Captain Lisa Torres, formerly of the Earth Merchant Marine, now commanded the independent vessel Horizon's Edge as it emerged from quantum-dimensional space near the world of Kalos 7. The planet had been a forgotten mining colony, its population barely surviving by extracting rare minerals for shipment to the core worlds. But the quantum display showed a transformed world. Orbital manufacturing facilities glittered in the system's sunlight. Massive ships were under construction using designs that combined technologies from dozens of different species. The planet itself showed signs of terraforming projects that would have been impossible under the old system. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a welcome transmission from Kalos Control. They're inviting us to dock at their new trade station." Torres smiled. "Set course for the station. I want to see what these people have built." The Kalos trade station was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human quantum technologies provided the basic framework, but every surface showed the influence of different species, bioorganic corridors that cleaned the air naturally, gravity systems that could accommodate dozens of different physiologies simultaneously, and market areas designed to facilitate trade between species that had never interacted before. Station Administrator Vex, a member of the tentacled nautiloid species, greeted Torres personally. "Welcome to Kalos Station, Captain. We understand you're interested in our new shipbuilding contracts." "That's right," Torres confirmed. "Earth needs cargo vessels capable of carrying diverse goods between different environmental conditions. We heard you're building ships that can adapt their internal atmospheres and gravity fields in real time." Vex's tentacles writhed with pride. "Our bioadaptive cargo vessels are the most advanced in the galaxy. We combine human quantum engineering with Centaurian biotechnology and our own environmental adaptation systems. The result is a ship that can carry any cargo to any world, regardless of the local conditions." It was exactly the kind of innovation that was emerging across the galaxy as species combined their unique capabilities in ways that had never been possible under the Council's rigid system. But as they toured the ship construction facilities, Torres noticed something concerning. "Those weapons systems," she observed, pointing to the defensive installations being fitted to civilian vessels. "They look military-grade." Vex's tentacles darkened slightly. "Unfortunately necessary, Captain. Not everyone has embraced the new order with enthusiasm. There are groups throughout the galaxy that prefer the old system of technological scarcity and controlled access. Indeed, the rapid changes had not been universally welcomed. In several sectors of the galaxy, established power structures were fighting back against the democratization of advanced technology. The consortium of corporate worlds had declared independence from both the Reform Council and the new cooperative networks, establishing their own territory where traditional hierarchies and profit-driven systems still dominated. They had begun raiding merchant vessels, stealing advanced technology, and imposing their own version of order on any worlds they could control. Even more concerning were reports of entire species that had been driven to fanaticism by the rapid pace of change. The purist movement, led by species that believed the old ways were divinely ordained, had begun attacking any world that adopted human technologies. These threats had forced the emerging galactic community to confront a fundamental question. How do you maintain freedom and cooperation in the face of those who would use that same freedom to destroy both? The answer was beginning to emerge in the form of the Mutual Defense Cooperative, an alliance of species and worlds that had committed to protecting each other against any group that sought to reimpose authoritarian control. The MDA's first major test came when the consortium launched a massive raid against the Kalos system, seeking to capture the advanced shipyards and force the local population back into corporate servitude. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding the UES Liberation, received the distress call while patrolling the Galactic Rim. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, We're receiving an emergency broadcast from Kalos 7. They're under attack by a consortium battle fleet. Estimated strength, 200 vessels. Course to Kalos, maximum quantum acceleration, Rodriguez ordered. And send word to all MDA vessels in this sector. It's time to test our mutual defense agreements. The battle for Kalos 7 would become the defining moment of the new galactic order. When the consortium fleet arrived expecting to overwhelm a single world's defenses, they instead found themselves facing vessels from over 50 different species, all united in defense of the principles of freedom and cooperation. The engagement lasted less than an hour. Consortium vessels, still using relatively primitive technologies, found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered by ships equipped with the latest collaborative innovations. But more importantly, they found themselves facing an enemy that fought not for conquest or profit, but for the right of every species to determine its own destiny. As the surviving consortium vessels retreated, Captain Torres transmitted a message that would be broadcast throughout the galaxy. This is Captain Torres of the Mutual Defense Cooperative. To any group that believes they can reimpose the old order through force, understand this. The galaxy has changed. We are no longer isolated worlds competing for scraps from our masters' tables. We are a community of equals, and we will defend that community against any threat. The message was received on Earth with a mixture of pride and concern. Humanity had successfully liberated the galaxy from authoritarian control, but they had also unleashed forces that could not be easily predicted or controlled. Sarah Chun, now serving as Earth's representative to the Reformed Council, stood in the human embassy on the council station. Through the windows, she could see ships from hundreds of different species docking and departing, their crews engaged in trade, diplomacy, and collaboration that would have been impossible just months earlier. "We did it," she said to Dr. Wu, who had arrived to brief her on the latest technological developments. "We broke the old system and gave the galaxy a chance to build something better. The question now," Wu replied, "is whether we can guide that change in positive directions. We've given every species the tools to build utopia or hell. The choice is theirs to make." As if to emphasize his point, reports were arriving of new developments throughout the galaxy. Some species were using their newfound freedom to explore distant stars and build incredible new civilizations. Others were turning their advanced technologies toward warfare and conquest. The galaxy was free, but freedom brought both opportunities and dangers that no one had fully anticipated. The next chapter of galactic history was being written by thousands of different species, each making their own choices about how to use the gifts humanity had provided. And humanity could only watch and hope that they had made the right decision in walking away from the Galactic Council all those months ago, 2 years after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of the newest marvel of galactic cooperation, the Unity Station. Built in the space between galaxies, the massive structure served as a meeting point for the representatives of over 2,000 different species and civilizations. The station itself was a testament to what could be achieved when beings work together as equals rather than subjects and rulers. Human quantum engineering provided the structural framework that allowed the station to exist in the void between galaxies. Centauri biotechnology created living sections that could adapt to the needs of any visiting species. Rigelian energy systems powered computational networks that could translate between millions of different languages and communication methods simultaneously. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said Admiral Thane, whose energy-based form shimmered beside her at the observation window. The former Council military leader had become one of humanity's strongest allies in building the new galactic order. "It represents everything we hoped for when we made our choice," Sarah agreed. "Free cooperation between equals, unrestricted by artificial hierarchies or technological monopolies." Through the transparent aluminum windows, they watched as ships from civilizations that had never met before docked together, their crews working to establish new trade relationships, research partnerships, and cultural exchanges. But even as they celebrated the success of the new order, both leaders were aware of the challenges that remained. The latest reports from the consortium territories? Sarah asked. Thane's form dimmed slightly. Still concerning. CEO Vax has declared himself emperor of the corporate worlds and is demanding tribute from any vessel passing through his claimed territory. His forces now control nearly 50 star systems, and they're using captured human technology to build increasingly powerful weapons. It was the dark side of humanity's gift to the galaxy. By freely sharing advanced technology, they had ensured that authoritarian groups could also access those same capabilities. The corporate consortium had become a genuine threat to the emerging galactic community, using their stolen technology to build an empire based on the old principles of exploitation and control. And the Purest Alliance? Prophet Zereth has gathered followers from nearly 200 species, Thane reported grimly. They believe the old ways of technological scarcity and enforced hierarchy were divinely ordained. They see our cooperative networks as blasphemy against the natural order. The Purest Alliance represented a different kind of threat, fanaticism driven by religious conviction rather than economic greed. They had rejected all human technologies as corruption, but ironically were using those same technologies in their attempts to destroy the new galactic order. Perhaps, Sarah mused, we were naive to think that simply providing technology would automatically lead to positive outcomes. No, Tane du seguirid firmly. What you provided was choice. For the first time in galactic history, every species has the tools they need to determine their own destiny. Some will choose poorly, but that is the price of freedom. Indeed, for every negative development, there were dozens of positive ones. The Exploration Corps, a cooperative venture between 300 species, had launched the first expedition to the neighboring Andromeda galaxy. The scientific collective had achieved breakthrough after breakthrough, including the discovery of life-bearing worlds that could support multiple different species simultaneously. Most remarkably, the crime and conflict that many had predicted would result from the collapse of central authority had actually decreased. When species no longer competed for scarce resources or limited technological access, the primary sources of interstellar conflict had simply evaporated. But the greatest test of the new order was about to begin. In the depths of space, beyond the edge of the local group, something had been watching the transformation of the galaxy with growing interest. The Hierarchs were an ancient species that had abandoned their physical forms eons ago, existing as pure consciousness within massive computational matrices. They had observed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, usually with detached scientific interest. But humanity's actions had caught their attention in a way that nothing had for millions of years. Supreme Hierarch Omnidus convened the collective consciousness for only the third time in recorded history. The species designation human has achieved something unprecedented. Omnidus communicated to his fellow hierarchs through pure thought transmission. They have voluntarily relinquished potential dominion over their galaxy in favor of empowering others. Fascinating, responded Hierarch Evolutus. In all our observations of galactic civilizations, species that achieve technological superiority invariably use that superiority to establish dominance. The humans have done the opposite. Which brings us to the question, added Hierarch Terminus, of whether their approach represents a sustainable model for galactic civilization, or whether it will inevitably collapse into chaos and warfare. The debate among the hierarchs continued for subjective centuries within their accelerated consciousness, but only minutes in real time. Finally, Omnidus reached a conclusion. We will conduct the trial. The trial was a concept so ancient that most galactic civilizations had forgotten it ever existed. When the hierarchs deemed a species or civilization worthy of evaluation, they would present them with an ultimate test, one that would determine whether they deserve to continue existing or should be eliminated for the good of the universe. No species in recorded history had ever passed the trial. The first sign that something unprecedented was happening came from deep space monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Massive energy signatures were appearing at the edge of known space, approaching from the void between galaxies. Dr. Wu, now directing the Galactic Early Warning Network from Luna, was among the first to detect the anomalies. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases, he reported to the emergency session of the Galactic Cooperation Council. Whatever's approaching possesses technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive. The approaching entities made no attempt at communication. They simply appeared at the edge of each major stellar system, their presence detectable only by the massive gravitational distortions they created in space-time itself. Within hours, every inhabited world in the galaxy received an identical transmission. The message bypassed all known communication systems, appearing directly in the consciousness of every sentient being simultaneously. We are the hierarchs. We have observed your recent transformation with interest. You will now be tested to determine whether your new paradigm represents evolution or degeneration. Prepare for the trial of worthiness. The galaxy erupted into panic and preparation in equal measure. Ancient databases were searched for any reference to the hierarchs or their trial, but the entities were so old that even their name had been forgotten by most civilizations. President Martinez convened an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership in the deep underground bunkers that had been constructed during the early days of the conflict with the Council. What do we know about these hierarchs? He asked the assembled experts. Dr. Vasquez consulted her displays. Very little. They appear in the oldest records of a few species as observers who would appear at crucial moments in galactic history. Most references treat them as myths or legends. But the energy readings suggest they're very real, General Harrison added. Our sensors can barely detect them, but what we can measure indicates they possess technology beyond our current understanding. The question, Sarah Chun observed, is what kind of test they intend to conduct. If they're as advanced as they appear, they could eliminate every species in the galaxy without difficulty. The answer came within days, and it was more horrifying than anyone had imagined. The hierarch's test was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. They had somehow isolated the galaxy within a closed-loop temporal field. Time would repeat the same period over and over until the galactic community either achieved perfect cooperation or destroyed itself completely. The loop cycle is exactly 1 galactic year, Dr. Wu reported to the emergency council session on Unity Station. Every time this cycle completes, everything resets except for our memories and knowledge. We retain our experiences, but the physical universe returns to its starting state. The implications were staggering. Resources that were consumed during each cycle would be restored at the reset. Lives lost would be restored. But the knowledge gained, the alliances formed, and the lessons learned would accumulate across cycles. It's a test of our ability to learn and grow, Sarah realized. Each cycle, we have the opportunity to make better choices based on what we've learned from previous attempts. But the test came with a terrifying deadline. If the galaxy failed to achieve the hierarch's standards of cooperation within 1,000 cycles, every sentient species would be eliminated permanently. The first cycle was a disaster. Panic spread across the galaxy as species and governments tried to hoard resources and prepare for an uncertain future. The corporate consortium launched massive raids to capture as much territory as possible before the reset. The Purist Alliance declared holy war on anyone using advanced technology. Even a mutual defense cooperative struggled to maintain order as fear and desperation drove former allies to conflict. When the cycle reset occurred, Sarah found herself back on Unity Station, watching as the same ships that had been destroyed in the final days of the cycle docked peacefully once again. We have to do better, she told the emergency session of galactic leaders. We have 999 chances remaining to prove that cooperation is possible. The second cycle went somewhat better. With knowledge of what would happen, the galactic community was able to prevent some of the worst conflicts. But new problems emerged as different species tried to use their advanced knowledge to gain advantages over others. By the 10th cycle, patterns were becoming clear. The species that embraced cooperation and shared their knowledge freely made the most progress. Those that tried to use the resets for personal gain found themselves increasingly isolated and irrelevant. But it was during the 57th cycle that the breakthrough occurred. A young human diplomat named Marcus Webb had been working with representatives from the Consortium and Purist Alliance, not trying to defeat them, but trying to understand the fundamental fears and needs that drove their destructive behavior. "They're not evil," he reported to Sarah. "They're terrified. The corporate consortium is driven by fear of scarcity. They believe that resources and opportunities are finite, so they must be hoarded. The Purist Alliance is driven by fear of change. They believe that too much transformation will destroy everything they value." "Can we address those fears?" Sarah asked. "I think so. But it requires us to acknowledge that our rapid transformation of galactic society has left some people behind. We need to find ways to include them in the new order rather than forcing them to conform or be excluded." The insight led to a new approach. Instead of opposing the authoritarian groups, the galactic community began reaching out to them, addressing their underlying concerns, and finding ways to include them in the cooperative networks. It took 300 cycles to perfect the approach, but gradually, even the most resistant groups began to see the benefits of cooperation over conflict. The corporate worlds discovered that shared resources and collaborative innovation generated more wealth than exploitation ever could. The Purist Alliance found ways to preserve their values while embracing beneficial changes. By the 700th cycle, something unprecedented in galactic history was emerging. A truly unified community of species working together as equals, with no one left behind or excluded. The final test came in the 999th cycle. The hierarchs revealed themselves fully for the first time, their forms appearing as beings of pure light and consciousness above every inhabited world simultaneously. "You have learned to cooperate within your single galaxy," Supreme Hierarch Omnidus communicated to every sentient being. "But the ultimate test is this. Will you extend that cooperation to those who have tested you?" The challenge was clear. The hierarchs had put the galaxy through nearly 1,000 cycles of repeated testing, causing untold suffering in the process. The ultimate test of the galactic community's commitment to cooperation was whether they would accept even their tormentors as equals. The debate raged across the galaxy and throughout the community of species. Some called for revenge against the hierarchs for their cruel testing. Others argued that the hierarchs had provided an invaluable service by forcing the galaxy to evolve beyond its previous limitations. But it was humanity that provided the final answer. "We invite you to join us," Sarah Chan broadcast to the hierarchs from Unity Station. "Not as our superiors or our subjects, but as equals in a community of consciousness. You have much to teach us, and perhaps we have something to offer you as well." The response was immediate and profound. The temporal loop collapsed, returning the galaxy to normal time. But the hierarchs did not disappear. Instead, they began the long process of reintegrating with physical reality, sharing their eons of accumulated knowledge with the galactic community they had helped to create. Years later, Sarah Chun stood once again in the observation deck of Unity Station, now expanded to accommodate beings from multiple galaxies and dimensions. The station had become the heart of a cooperative network that spanned not just the Milky Way, but neighboring galaxies as well. "Was it worth it?" asked Marcus Webb, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the hierarchs. All the suffering, all the repeated cycles of conflict and learning. Sarah considered the question as she watched ships from thousands of different species and civilizations working together in perfect harmony. The galaxy we have now, where every being has the opportunity to reach their full potential, where cooperation has replaced exploitation, where diversity is celebrated rather than feared. Yes, it was worth it. She paused, watching as a group of young beings from dozens different species worked together on a joint project, their different capabilities combining to create something none of them could have achieved alone. We walked away from the Galactic Council because we believe that every species deserved the right to determine its own destiny, she continued. What we discovered is that true freedom isn't about independence. It's about the choice to work together as equals. The transformation that had begun with humanity's defiant departure from the council chambers had become something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy had evolved from